Every week, it's our goal to share financial information that helps you in both your life and financial vineyard. We hope it takes you from your roots to the journey of your vines and the influences in the air that help craft your delicious life. Like wine, life and finances have different palates that should be celebrated and not judged. Welcome to this edition of Wine and Dime with Amy Irvine and Kate Welker. And for those of you, if you could only see us right at this very minute, I actually have a towel on my head and Kate's hair is wet. So we're real and it's April, and that's all I have to say about that. So to start the show, let's just say welcome, Kate.
Welcome. I'm so glad to be back again. Yes, we are recording in that time of year that things get a little hectic for us. We said we're real, so it's good to let the audience know that we're not always all put together.
Yeah,
either.
We're super real this morning. But so much for talking about towels on the head. Let's talk about the real crux of today is a Friday, as we're usually recording on a Friday. So my mind automatically goes to, what am I drinking this evening? And Kate and I have been talking a little bit about a winery called Arbor Hill. It's off from Canandaigua Lake. Canandaigua is not a lake I often mention. But we were talking a little bit about it, and it is a family adventure, I would say. And Kate, I don't know if you've actually had the opportunity to visit Arbor Hill Winery or not.
I have not had a chance. We enjoy Canandaigua. I was just sharing with you a little bit of, that's where my husband went to college, and kind of how we got together was an event he had to go back to as an alumnus. So we'll go back there. Like our anniversary last year, we went and toured. There's a gardens that I'm sure he was thrilled to tour that with me. But it was a nice little area, beautiful lake, beautiful mountains around it. So it would be something I think we should make a stop in the future.
And I do think it's a place that you could take the kids, because they do have like grape flavored twists, and it's really, it's not a party atmosphere. But it's a fun atmosphere, and it's a beautiful view. Oh my gosh, it's extraordinary view from up there. So when I was looking through the options, as you know, I like dry reds, most of the time, but they do have some good Gewürztraminer, which is a dry white. They have a lot of fun sauces. They have some really good, I would think, champagne-y sparkling wine, because we can't say champagne. They even have chocolate-covered wine bottles.
I am so intrigued by what that entails.
And they also have some like raspberry wines. So I think it's a place that for people that are just, every range can go in for. So that's our tip for today, is go visit either online, their website. I love it. It's thegrapery.com. Or go visit their beautiful view and try some of their wine. So people might be wondering, what are we going to talk about in the month of April, especially considering the timing that this podcast is going to be released? And they're probably thinking taxes, but nope, we covered that mostly in the month of March. And now it's the recovery zone from the tax season. And April tends to be a spring cleaning month for a lot of people. So Kate and I thought we'd talk a little bit about how to maybe do some spring cleaning with your paperwork. Kate, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think that is a great topic to talk about right now. And I know for me, working with taxes and in the tax season, spring cleaning brings a couple thoughts to mind beyond just getting my house in order. And also things tend to get, if it's not urgent, it gets put aside for a few months. So my spring cleaning is definitely needed. But also thinking of taxes and the paperwork that comes along with getting organized for that, just paperwork in general, and things we have on hand that are accumulating or piling. I hear people sometimes tell me, I just have so many papers, especially going through like a situation or dealing. I actually recently, a couple of people that have had to see spouses, all the paperwork. Like, what do I have? What do I need to keep? Where do I need to file it? And I will admit myself, I try to be organized, but I tend to see documents come in if they're not urgent and I know they just need to be filed away. Sometimes they go in the to be filed file that is not actually filed yet and grows until I sit down and tackle it. Instead of spending a little time at a time, I have a large project to sort and process and determine what to file and what to get rid of.
Do you keep paper files? Is that how you keep things?
I do both. I still have quite I've pared down my paper files, and I'm working to go more digital with my own files.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Brent and I are basically all virtual because of being in 2 locations. We need to be able to access our files regardless where we're at, whether it's New York or whether it's Florida. So we tend to keep things virtual. And I've been adding more and more stuff to our vault system, because then if anybody else on the team ever needed to access that information, they'd have, that information available to them. Is there a certain, because everybody has their own filing system, right? Is there a certain way that you organize things, like in your mind? Is there a certain file system that you use, or any recommendations that you have for people if they're just wondering, like, where to get started?
Yeah. And like you said, everyone's a little bit different. So I do think it's important, before I even get into like my system, that someone knows your system as well, someone important to you. So for me, it should be my spouse understands how I file. I know with my parents, sometimes my father doesn't understand the way my mother files because her brain works differently than his. So just explaining whatever your system is. So for me, I tend to file things by topic. So I have like insurance as a topic for me. And then I have sub-files for like auto, home, medical. I have one for legal documents. And then from there, it's things like our passports or birth certificates. And even in my digital files, this is how I do it too. So I go by large topic and then down. I don't go by company. I do know some people that file by like Progressive. They put their insurance stuff in Progressive, where I do it by topic, what it means. Because to me, I can just think through, no matter if my company's changed, it's always my auto insurance is in that file. And kind of sensical that way. Same with utilities. Like I do utility and then like by company if needed.
So really, it's creating almost like a table of contents for somebody if they ever need it.
Yes. And I think I like that system because like I said, I think it makes a little more sense. If someone else came in, it would be easy to walk through and find where things were. And if you're changing companies, or as life goes on and you forget what happened 2 years ago or what you were thinking at that point in time, it should be right there and make sense to you at all points in time.
Yeah.
Where to put things as well.
Where to put things. And kind of digging a little bit deeper. A lot of people ask me questions like, how long should I keep my tax documents? And it sort of depends, right?
It absolutely depends. That's always, I feel that's our answer for so many things. It depends. So the IRS says 3 years. I tend to lean towards 7 years. But what I will also tell some people is your actual tax forms, like your 1040s, that information the IRS could recreate. They should be able to recreate if they really needed to go back. And that's usually the smallest piece of our taxes. It's more the documentation behind it that I'm concerned about. So if you don't have a business, if you're not itemizing, the 3 years would probably be okay for you in your situation. And when we talk about going back like 7 years, that's because if you got audited going back 3 years and they found something, they could then choose to open up past years. And it's more of a concern for traditionally someone that has a business or a rental, itemized deductions, taking a lot of deductions that you'd have to prove to the IRS and have that documentation. And
a few states like California actually recommend a little bit longer than 3 years. So you should know what your state kind of guidelines are as well.
Yes.
It's just kind of important.
Yep.
And then also I like, kind of leading into the next step is the type of documents to keep. So the reason I said it depends is because it's not as big of a deal anymore. But years ago, asset custodians were not required to keep track of the price you paid for the stocks and bonds and mutual funds that you purchased. So if you have some relatively old positions, then you should hopefully have that documentation and never get rid of it, because it might be needed to be used to recreate that, what we call basis. So that's really important to kind of keep that documentation for a long period of time. But if you are looking at, I don't know, like old gas bills and, those kinds of things, not necessarily needed unless you used it on your tax return as a home office expense to keep for years and years and years and years, right?
Right. So that was, I started initially, the first time I had a home office. So I kept utility bills, and this was prior to, I would say, reliable digital storage. So everything was paper. So I'd had the gas bills, the electric bills, everything, internet, cell phone. Now those can just come electronically, and I download them and keep them. So if you, again, use it for a business, keep it, but electronic, anything you can transfer, that big paperwork like that, electronic is excellent. And the IRS, the last 2 audits I've seen, have requested everything in electronic format.
I'm not surprised, especially post-COVID.
That was why they did not want anyone coming to the office. So they asked if we could put it in a digital format, put it on a flash drive, and mail it to them that way instead, so they could have digital receipt of those expenses. So that clears it out. One thing I thought about keeping longer as well than even the 7 years, when you mentioned cost basis, it still refers to basis, but on homes and properties.
Yep.
Because anything you've added to your home increases the basis, or if you own an investment property. And so under our current laws, your home, you can exclude $250,000 of gain per person. So, for a married household, it's $500,000 of gain. In my situation, the part of the country I live in, I will not see that kind of gain on a home, most likely. So most people are like, I'm not worried about it, I can exclude it. But we never know if those laws could change in the future. So I make sure any improvements we've done, I have a separate file. I actually keep a spreadsheet that goes through like what improvements we've kept in the house and how the basis has increased. That, and it's easy when we go, like anything that needs to be done banking, or if you have an appraisal, there's already a record of it in one place. But those records are really important. Or if you convert your house to a rental at some point, if you move out, you're going to need that information. So that's information you should hold on to, I would say, indefinitely, or until you dispose of the asset.
A few other things that I think are good indefinite items to hold on to is if, unfortunately, you've had a divorce, you want to keep those divorce papers on file, and you want to keep your ex-spouse's social security number, if at all possible, because if you are married more than 10 years, when you file for social security, you want to be able to, see which benefit is bigger, yours or your ex-spouse's. Also, if you have served in the military, you want to keep those discharge papers. That's something that you'll need to come up with, potentially for veterans benefits, but sometimes for other benefits like tax savings and stuff like that. And then
I'll piggyback on that, Amy. My mom's family was recently eligible for a benefit for my grandfather because of where he served in World War II. There was some radioactive testing, and they were eligible for a family benefit, but they needed his discharge papers. So it was a lengthy process. Or no, they just needed his number, but they didn't have it. So it was a lengthy process to go back and recreate those records. So if you can keep it on file, if it was in his files, his family would have had it, and they did not.
Yeah, that's an important one. And I also think, one thing before you do discard any of those tax documents that Kate mentioned about on the 3 to 7 years, one thing that I've recommended to folks is to pull their social security statement once a year. You can get that electronically now. It's a pain. I get it. But to go pull their social security statement once a year, compare the earnings reported on the social security statement to the actual W-2. We actually recently found somebody that had a very different social security wage base compared to their W-2. And when we started tracking down why, apparently somebody had filed using their social security number and had social security tax withheld. So when the 2 W-2s got reported to the Social Security office, it combined the wage base. So we were able to actually go back and track that down. And we don't know if it was an error by the reporting company or what it was, but the person that we found it on never worked for that particular company. So I was more concerned of identity theft, in that situation. And so we froze their credit report. We reported it to the Social Security and Medicare office, like all of those things. But we discovered that because we compared their prior W-2 to their Social Security statement. So that's another way to sort of protect yourself as a, sort of side note that I wanted to throw out there. So, once you destroy those W-2s, it's a bit challenging to go back and recreate. So just balancing that or, comparing that against your Social Security statement, I think is pretty important.
Yes. And the digital storage doesn't take up as much space. So if you are concerned, because I know sometimes it's hard to let go of those important papers, you could always scan them and keep them that way too, so that you could dispose of the physical files. As long as if you had a digital copy, it's backup if you ever needed it for something.
Yeah. And sort of wrapping up our conversation today on that point, the digital scanners used to be very expensive, especially a fast digital scanner. So two kind of thoughts I'd love to hear your commentary on. One is your thoughts on, $100 to $200 on a decent digital scanner, right?
Yeah, so I have one. I love mine. I almost just held it up like everyone can see my scanner. I have mine's an Epsom, but it folds up. It was under $200. I think it was under $200. And for me, it was a little bit of a saved up gift for myself. I kept saying, should I, shouldn't I? One, I love, I can carry it. So for our work if I have to go to a client, it can go with me and I could scan something. But personally, it's nice because it doesn't have to be out all the time. I kind of tuck it down next to where my printer is, and then I can just pull it up, plug it into the computer. It's fast. You can load multiple pages opposed to the old printer where you have to put one page at a time.
Right.
So I will be honest, if I have to do multiple pages, I will put things off forever. By saying multiple pages, I have to lift the lid, put the page down and scan, where the automatic with an auto document feed just saves that mental process of knowing this will be less than a 2-minute job. I can get it done quickly and get it filed. So that is one that
it actually takes you less time to do that because it's 1 or 2 minutes versus actually putting things in the filing cabinet and the paper files.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just there. It's done, and it can be out and take up less space in my house and in my files, and less space in my brain to think about what to do with that or how to take care of it. I know there's other ones out there. That's just the one I've had, and it works really well. So I like that it's tiny. It can fold up. It can be portable. More and more of the family printers, though, you can find family, home office options there as well. And then I have for little things, I actually have a scanner app on my phone. So I can I had to pay for it. There was a fee for it, but I can take a picture of something. I like that sometimes for receipts, things like that. When I'm out on the go, I can just take a picture, scan it, and have it saved. Those apps, though, are pretty inexpensive, under $25. Oh, I think the one I have was maybe $5. Yeah. They're very inexpensive. And again, they're not always the clearest scan compared to using an actual scanner. Like the resolution's a little low, but it works for the majority of items that we would need.
And then the second, those are great tips. Thank you. And then the second question as a follow-up is, and this is a concern that I think a lot of people legitimately have, is if I'm scanning this stuff and I'm saving it on my computer, what if my computer breaks? What are your thoughts on cloud storage? And, I get tons of question on the safety of cloud storage between Apple and Google and Amazon and Backupify and all of those different things that are out there. Barracuda is another one that you can actually do remote storage of your hard drive. What are your thoughts on that? Yeah, so I've gotten a lot more comfortable with it. Initially, I think I had some concerns just as a user and a consumer, like a lot of people did. But as long as it's a reputable company and maybe you do your own research on security, I personally use Google Drive for a lot of my files. I'm very comfortable with their security. You can also use a backup system. So there's software out there that can back up your files so that even if the cloud went down, there's a backup to your cloud. So you almost have triple backup. If your computer dies, you've got a cloud backup. And if the cloud goes down, there's another backup source out there if you wanted an extra layer of protection. And then on your end, just good internet security across the board is important. So whatever you're using as a system, you need to keep your system secure, because I think, honestly, the odds of someone getting into your system versus, say, Google is probably a little higher if you're not careful. Yeah, I think that password security feature is really something that's pretty critical. I think making sure you have a strong password. I also, and maybe I'm skeptical about this, but I also feel like if you pay a little bit for it, you have better security, right? And the things that I always check is is my data at rest encrypted? Is my data in movement encrypted? And those are the two things that I always look for when I'm looking at backup services. So, and also is your computer encrypted, right? Is it at rest? Is it encrypted? So those are things that I think I do like with Google, I know, and Amazon, they have all of your data is split among multiple servers. So it's not like it's all sitting in one place. So if one server gets hacked, if you want to call it that, then they're not actually going to be able to get all the data because it's not all together. Like pieces of the data are in one server and then other pieces of the data are on another server. So, that's something that I think is really important to explore when you're thinking about that. But I think everybody should have some sort of backup system, whether it's a thumb drive, an external hard drive, a virtual backup, whatever it might be. In today's world, with so much going on, I just think that, if your system gets hacked, knowing what got hacked and whether or not it was encrypted will really give you a peace of mind. And then if God forbid you're one of those people that get, what do they call that when you,
we both know what to say. Yeah, like you're
for money, basically. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Then, if you have a backup to the data and it's encrypted data, then you probably aren't going to have to pay the fee to get your data back. So,
yes.
Any other tips that you would give regarding, spring cleaning and, heading into May even?
Yeah. So for me, a clean space and slate is kind of a happy space, even though it can be hard to do. So I try to work on a little bit at a time, but I know it can be a project at times. We want to hide it, but just sort of giving yourself some time to deal with it. If you can get a system that is easy for you, you're going to be more apt to stay on top of it with your information and not be afraid to get rid of things that you don't need to hold on to anymore. So I don't think we have the time to go into every document you could have out there, but if it's something that you really don't see a need, that it's going to come up on a tax return, you're going to need to prove anything on it, and or if it's a bill that's been paid and settled, you can get rid of that unless you have any reason you can think of you need it in the future. But if not, you can get rid of that. You don't need to keep everything forever.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time, considering what's going on in today's world and how busy everybody is. But tax season is almost over. And I think as this podcast is going to be released, you are going to be enjoying a little bit of R&R with your family, which I'm so excited about.
I am hopefully sitting on a beach and enjoying some sunshine when this airs.
And the important thing about that, when we talk about clearing the clutter, is also clearing the mental clutter. Mm-hmm. So I am like you, Kate. If I have a space that is cluttered with papers and documents, and I can't focus, I'm like a squirrel and I'm hopping from item to item. So I think we talk a lot about paper, we talk a lot about filing, but I also think it's important to, and maybe that's a future podcast where we talk about how we clear our mental space. I think it is. Maybe May is spring cleaning for our mind.
That sounds great.
Stay tuned. We'll give you tips as we talk about how we did that after tax season. Thanks everybody for listening. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast in the jam session between Kate and Amy. If you like this show, please feel free to share it with your friends, your family. Like us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And don't forget to rate us on Apple and Spotify, because the more that you rate us, the more our rating moves up and great people get to listen to what we're talking about. We hope you all have a wonderful day or evening after you listen to this. Bye-bye.
And that will about do it for today's episode of Wine and Dine. You can contact Amy through the website, www.rootedpg.com, or amy@rootedpg.com. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram @rootedpg for the latest news. And if you have any questions, comments, or topics you would like to hear about, feel free to let us know. And don't forget to rate and subscribe the show wherever you get your podcasts. And again, thank you for listening, and be sure to tune in next time.